17th century, French alchemists became wealthy by grinding arsenic rock into a colorless and odorless powder that they sold to their fellow countrymen and women. Some women would use it to powder their faces to look more pale. Others used it in more sinister ways, to do away with a wealthy old parent, a grandparent, an uncle or aunt, so they could in turn inherit and become wealthy themselves. In the year 1670, arsenic poisonings become a sort of epidemic, so much so that the substance became known as the inheritance or succession powder, and has been the main protagonist in many high-profile murders throughout history. Centuries after the invention of arsenic trioxide, physicians still had no idea how to treat or even detect arsenic poisoning. Well into the 19th century, doctors were hopelessly trying to determine whether victims had been poisoned by throwing the contents of their stomach into a fire to see if it smelled like garlic. And people were literally getting away with murder. 3 centuries after the so-called epidemic of murder by arsenic, kind and homely Marie Besnard amazed her female friends when she described arsenic as an excellent substitute to divorce. They, of course, thought she was joking. But was she? Marie Joséphine Philippine Davaillaud was born on 5 August 1986 in Loudun, France. Her parents were well-to-do farmers who absolutely adored her. Before she was born, they sadly lost 2 infant boys to illness. Her mom never failed to tell her that she loved her enough for 3, including that of the girl's 2 dead brothers in her affection. She was constantly reminded that death and illness were life's constant companions, and at the age of 12, she herself fell seriously ill. She was diagnosed with typhoid, which was more than likely caused by exposure to untreated water infected by salmonella bacteria. She was treated, but the doctor told her parents that if they wanted their daughter to grow to an old age, she should never overtax her brain. So, Marie did not return to school. She could do a little writing and reading, and she was very good at embroidery, but was always very careful as to not overtax her brain, and spent a lot of time helping her mother with housework. Marie had started fancying her first cousin, Auguste Anthony, the son of her mother's brother, when she was around 17, and she made this very clear to her family. But it was not until she was 18 that her parents allowed the two to step out together. Another 6 years passed before Marie's parents gave them consent to get married. Marie was 24 and Auguste was 26. Now, Auguste was very sickly, and before they were even married, had been diagnosed with tuberculosis, which in 1920 was incurable, even untreatable, but Marie stated that she didn't care because she was in love with Auguste. For most of their marriage, he remained sick in bed with Marie looking after him. Everyone in the village thought of her as an angel in the way that she cared for him. Sadly, Marie had miscarried their baby early in their marriage, and 7 years after they were married, Auguste, at the age of 33, passed away in 31-year-old Marie's arms. Marie was thought to be a very good woman, and she was encouraged by friends and family to move on after Auguste's passing, but she was grief-stricken and turned away all suitors, until she met 36-year-old Leon Besnard, who was a friend of her cousin Pascaline and her husband. He was a rare breed, being unmarried at his age, but as rumors went, he wasn't exactly free, as he was said to be Marie's married cousin's lover and the father of her younger 2 children. Pascaline was, however, the one that introduced Marie and Leon, and was very persistent about them getting married, perhaps thinking that if he was married to Marie, it would throw suspicion off of them. So on 12 August 1928, 11 months after August's passing, 32-year-old Marie and 36-year-old bachelor Leon were married. Leon had worked with his father as a saddler and harness maker. The family business did well, and they never had to wonder where their next meal was going to come from. Leon was rather short-tempered, and one day in an argument with his father, he grabbed him by the neck and caused a total breakdown of the relationship between Leon and his family. So, Marie started slowly working at repairing their bad relationship. She succeeded in getting them reconciled and soon started to run one of the shops that belonged to the family. Leon did not just have a short temper, but he also had a wandering eye. Soon after they were married, Leon began disappearing for long periods at night, and gossip soon got around that he was seen at Pascaline's house on a regular basis, but Marie didn't want to believe the gossipers. So Leon kept going out, and Marie started receiving anonymous letters about the things that he was doing behind her back. So she confronted him, telling him to choose between her and Pascaline. He told her that he had married her, and he chose her. He also told her that he only went to Pascaline's house to feed his and Marie's horses that he kept in their barn on their premises. But he promised her that he would construct a barn in their yard and would then stop going to Pascaline's house. But it didn't take long for Leon to move on to the next one. Marie's best friend, Louise Pinto. But again, when rumors spread, she again decided to ignore them. As it turns out, Marie was said to have some affairs of her own. After 13 years of marriage, at the age of 49, Marie was said to start having an affair with one of their helpers. It was 1945 and the Second World War was over, but some German soldiers were still being held prisoner in France, and while they were waiting to be repatriated home, they worked on the farms. Leon had one of those helpers, Alfred Dietz, helping him with his horses. He hailed from Hamburg, and he lived in their home in the attic. Marie and Leon remained childless, and if you ignored the rumors about infidelity, the two seemed content with their marriage. No one ever witnessed any rows between them, nor even a harsh word said about the other to someone in confidence, and over the years they had become rather wealthy, having become the owners of 6 houses, an inn, a cafe, and 2 farms. On one they bred horses, and on the other one they cultivated vines. Seeing that neither of them were very well educated or very business savvy, people started wondering how they accumulated their assets. The answer was that they had inherited their wealth from sickly relatives, friends, and neighbors who one after another passed away. And grateful for their tender, loving care that Marie had bestowed on them during their illnesses, they had made the two their only heirs. As the owner of the funeral home in Loudun said of all the deaths, "This family is an undertaker's best friend." The first inheritance came when August passed, and he left Marie 7,240 French francs in his will. It was not a substantial amount, but it was not meager either. And by the time she married Leon, she hadn't spent the money yet. The first loved one who passed away was Leon's great-aunt on 22nd August 1938 at the age of 86 from what was said to be old age. Aunt Marie-Louise had been ill for some time, and Marie had lovingly taken care of her. It was also Marie who was with her when she had passed away. It was no secret that great-aunt Marie-Louise had 60,000 French francs in an account at the local post offices. She was also childless, and there was much speculation in the family over who she would be leaving her fortune to, and even though it was Marie that took care of her, all the money was left to Leon's parents. Leon was said to be furious when he learned about this and refused to attend the funeral. Marie also ended up not attending, stating that Leon would have been furious at her if she had gone. So they didn't inherit that wealth. Not yet, anyway. The second death was that of Toussaint Rivet, Leon's best friend and one of the men that Marie was said to have had an affair with. He passed just 11 months after great-aunt Marie-Louise. He was 65 and was unwell for only a short time, and Marie stepped in to help Blanche, his wife, take care of him. The doctor gave the cause of death as galloping consumption, and in his will he left all he owned to the distraught Blanche. Marie was there to comfort her every time she was upset. Marie's father was next to pass away, and this time Marie and Leon immediately benefited. He passed away 10 months after Toussaint, and the doctor gave the cause of death as a cerebral congestion. Marie knew that she was going to have to share her father's money and possessions with her mother, so immediately she and Leon took her in to live with them full-time. 4 months later, Leon's grandmother passed away. She was 92, and yet again the cause of death was old age, and again no one was surprised. Also, it was again Marie who stepped in to take care of the frail, ailing woman. She left all her assets to Leon's parents. It was Monday, September 2, 1940, barely 2 months after Grandma's passing, when Leon's father passed away. He was 58, and the family thought he was way too young. He had collapsed with severe stomach pain, vomiting, and diarrhea after having eaten mushrooms. He left his assets, which included the house next door to Marie and Leon's, to his widow. Marie-Louise, Leon's mom, was 10 years older than his father. She was the next to pass at the age of 69. She passed away only 4 months after her husband on 16 January 1941. The cause of death was given as double pulmonary congestion. Again, Marie was the one that nursed her until her final breath. She had, however, not forgiven Leon for grabbing his father by the throat. All that time ago, so she left everything to Leon's sister Lucy. Lucy inherited all the real estate, including the shops, and also a sum of 262,425 French francs. Lucy lived in the house next to Leon and Marie, 2 months after his mother passed, and not having seen Lucy for 3 days. On Thursday, 27 March 1941, Leon found his sister Lucy hanging from the stairwell. Lucy had not drawn up a will, or it was just that no one could find one. Marie and Lucy despised each other, and Lucy was often heard saying, "I will not leave that Marie woman even a teaspoon." But since no one could find a will, French law designated her next of kin as her heir, which, of course, was her only living brother, Leon. 9 months after Lucy's death, on 27 December 1941, Blanche, who was Toussaint Rivet's widow, had passed away. She was 58, and the cause of her death was given as acute uremia. Her illness was short, and again Marie was there by her side taking care of her. As she was basically on her deathbed, Leon bought her house on a life annuity contract, which meant that the ownership of Blanche's house was transferred to Leon without her having to vacate the property and without him having to pay her a lump sum. Instead, he would pay her an amount each month until she passed away. But she, of course, didn't know that her death would come so soon. And since she passed so soon after the contract was signed, he got himself a house without having to pay her 1 single cent. But it didn't really matter, as they would have gotten the house anyway, since Blanche was so grateful for Marie that she made her the sole heir of all her assets. For the next 3.5 years, Marie and Leon lived quietly. They worked hard running their farms and looking after their real estate portfolio, until death again struck their family. 88-year-old Pauline, a widowed cousin of Marie, and her 83-year-old unwed sister Virginie moved in with Marie and Leon when they had become too frail to care for themselves. On the 1st of July 1945, Pauline passed away, and as with Blanche's death, her doctor gave the cause of death as acute uremia, which was also aggravated due to old age, according to him. But stories started to spread. Pauline had appeared perfectly fine that day until she, quote-unquote, mistaked a bowl of lye, which was used to wash clothes for dessert, and apparently ate the whole bowl. Very suspicious. But even stranger is that 8 days later, Virginie had made the exact same mistake and also died. To no one's surprise, Marie and Leon were the only people to inherit the two sisters' assets. For the next year and a half, Marie and Leon enjoyed spending their inherited wealth. Marie bought fur coats, and Leon bought expensive horses. Whenever Marie heard that someone was ill, she immediately went to visit and asked if there was anything that she could do to help. The couple also donated generously to charity. In 1947, at 51, Marie found herself in the same place she was in 1927, cradling her 55-year-old sickly husband in her arms. Leon was suffering from, you guessed it, acute uremia, and the doctor said he had little hope of Leon surviving, but he seemed to get a little better after being given medicine. Next, Leon had a heart attack and he slipped into a coma, and on Saturday, 25 October 1947, he passed away. The doctor gave the cause of death as a uremia coma. Marie was the only one in his will. Louise Pinto, Marie's ex-bestie, who also was said to have an affair with Leon, remember, did not hesitate to tell anyone who cared to listen that a few days before Leon passed, he told her that Marie was poisoning him and was even vomiting into a bucket that she was holding. When he told her, très dramatique, he told her that there had been liquid on his plate. And then Marie poured soup onto it, and as soon as he finished eating, he started getting violently ill. Marie was aware of the gossip, but she tearfully denied to friends and neighbors that she had anything to do with Leon's death. She also denied a rumor that she wanted Leon out of her way in order to marry Alfred, the help that she allegedly started having an affair with in 1945. In 1949, a bad epidemic of influenza was raging, and Marie's mother had taken to her sickbed. Marie lovingly nursed her, but on January the 16th, her mother passed away. Marie was her mother's only heir, inheriting the woman's 263,873 French francs. Again, rumors started swirling that Marie had killed her mother because she opposed the relationship that she allegedly had with Alfred. The gossip could no longer be ignored, and the police were informed and opened an investigation that initially would focus only on the death of Leon, and the first step was to exhume his remains. On Tuesday, May 11, 1949, 1 year and 7 months after his death, Leon's remains were exhumed. On the 21st of July, the police came to Marie and told her they were taking her to the nearest police station, where she found out that arsenic was found in Leon's remains. The analysis was done by 2 toxicologists who found 19.45 milligrams per liter of arsenic in his remains. They described it as a large dose. Marie was told that she was under arrest on suspicion of having poisoned her husband with arsenic. She thought she would be able to go home that very same day, but the 2 inspectors returned and escorted her back to their car. Marie ended up being taken to prison, and she hired 2 of the top advocates in France to defend her. After Marie's arrest, the remains of 12 of Marie's relatives, friends, and neighbors were also exhumed. The first was August, Marie's first husband, and in his remains they found 60 milligrams per liter of arsenic. Suddenly, with 2 poisoned husbands, Marie was no longer seen as the Good Lady of Loudun, but the Black Widow of Loudun. And as each body was exhumed, they found the presence of arsenic in every single one. Small traces of arsenic was also found in the bones of Leon's grandmother, but it wasn't enough to make a case for arsenic poisoning. No arsenic was, however, found in the remains of Leon's mother. Marie was accordingly charged with the murder of 11 people and not 13. Her first victim having been her first husband August in 1927, and the last her mother in 1949. Marie, however, still maintained her innocence and hired another top Paris advocate to work alongside her other 2. The first thing she did was request another analysis of the remains by a different toxicologist, but the judge refused, stating that the doctor who did the initial was a most trusted toxicologist. After 8 months of being kept in the prison in Loudun, Marie was taken to Paris and incarcerated in a prison in the center of the capital. According to French law, her mental state was to be assessed by experts and could be done more efficiently in Paris. Marie had become a quote-unquote star in France, albeit for the wrong reasons, and she was subsequently given a cell in Section 5 of the prison, which, as she would boast with pride, was reserved for the elite. 3 psychiatrists began to assess her, and she always answered their questions mockingly. Back in her cell at the end of each day, she would describe that day's psychiatrist as stupid to her guards. 3 months later, Marie was taken back to the prison in Loudun, where they found no issues with her mental state whatsoever. French justice was, however, slow, and 30 months passed, with Marie remaining in prison. Her trial started on 20 February 1952. Marie arrived dressed smartly in her widow black, and a small hat covered her hair that she had also colored black. She listened to the clerk of the court read the indictment and learned that not only was she accused of 11 poisonings, but also of fraud, having cashed pension payments meant for an aunt of hers. Marie ended her first day in court in tears and unable to eat the meal that the prison warder's wife had kept warm for her. The next day, the toxicologist gave evidence, explaining the Marsh test he had employed in detecting arsenic in the remains of the victims. He ended up not only confusing everyone in court, but it appeared that he was confused himself. The Marsh test was developed in 1836 by an English chemist named James Marsh. It is where hydrogen sulfide is passed through the tissue suspected of containing the poison, which was disputed as not being an accurate way to test for arsenic poisoning, but he said it was approximately the same thing. Of course, her advocates fought against it and saying that approximately the same thing is not exactly the same thing. He was also unsure of how many containers of body matter his laboratory had received, but said that it was irrelevant how many there had been, just as the method he had employed to detect arsenic was also irrelevant. He stated that he could identify arsenic by looking at body matter. He stated, "Arsenic forms white rings." One of Marie's advocates handed him some tubes, asking him to identify which one contained arsenic just by looking at him, and he chose 2 of those tubes. As it turned out, none of the tubes contained any arsenic. This showed that his analysis of the remains could not be trusted, and Marie was in turn sentenced to 2 years incarceration on the fraud charge, but the arsenic poisoning case was suspended until further analysis could be done on the remains. However, new body matter would be needed, and for that the bodies would have to be exhumed yet again. 3 new toxicologists were appointed to carry out the new analysis. All 3 were based in Paris. A month later, the bodies were exhumed again. At first, Marie learned that no arsenic was found in any of them, and then a few days later, she was told that arsenic had indeed been found, but only in some of the bodies. She would, however, have to remain in prison. A 4th advocate joined her defense team. This time, it was a woman. "I'll get you acquitted. You will leave prison," she said to Marie on their first meeting. Her advocates also learned of a scientific report that states that arsenic could enter a buried corpse from the soil. Arsenic is a metalloid and is found in soil and rock. It can also naturally enter the hair of a corpse through the means of a bacteria. The concentration of arsenic in soil is minuscule though. It is also commonly found in fertilizer. When the soil was tested that the bodies were buried in, traces of arsenic were indeed found. The cemetery supervisor readily admitted that he had once grown potatoes in the cemetery and had used fertilizer. He also sprayed the young plants with insecticide that also contained traces of arsenic. But it wasn't enough to stop Marie's retrial from going ahead, which started on March 15, 1954, 2 years since the first trial, and during that time Marie had remained in prison, serving the 2-year sentence she had been given in the fraud case against her. The testimonies of witnesses describe Marie's life as one of petty arguments, jealousy, lies, and rumors. Some called her a saint. Others remembered how she had told them that arsenic was a good substitute for divorce. Some of her former employees described her as generous, while others said that she was the meanest person that they ever knew. Alfred had gone back to Germany, but one of the defense witnesses had gone to see him and relayed what he had been told by Alfred. He denied ever being Marie's lover. He also stated that police forced him to say things that weren't true so that they could take Marie into custody. As in the first trial, Marie's advocates again made fools of the toxicologists. They questioned Professor Griffin on his neutron activation analysis for finding arsenic in hair. They wanted to know for how long one must expose hair to radioactivity to find arsenic. They knew that his reply was going to be no less than 26.5 hours. According to the report that Griffin had given the examining magistrate, he had exposed the hair samples for just 15 hours. His analysis could therefore not be regarded as scientific proof of the presence of arsenic in the hair of the deceased. His colleagues fared no better, and one after the other turned red in the face when admitting that there were aspects of detecting arsenic which remained a mystery to them, and that this prevented them from proving that arsenic was in fact present in the remains. The grave diggers testified that the exhumed remains were left lying uncovered and unprotected on the ground beside the open tombs, and that the remains and soil were then picked up haphazardly with a towel and thrown into boxes that weren't sealed and then taken for testing. On the 31st of March, the judge adjourned the trial, requesting further analysis of the remains to be carried out, and 3 additional experts, a physicist, a chemical engineer, and a biologist, were appointed to carry out that new analysis. During these new analyses that was requested, Marie was granted bail of 1.2 million French francs, since she had finished serving her 2 years for the fraud, and she was delighted, hearing that she wouldn't have to stay in prison. But once she heard the amount of money that she would have to fork out, she burst into tears, knowing that she would have to remain locked up until she could find said money. She claimed that the reports in the newspapers about her wealth were extremely exaggerated, and that she was actually a poor woman since everything she inherited from Leon had been seized by the court, and someone was appointed to manage her estate. 12 days later, she finally went home when 2 second cousins, who believed that she was absolutely 100% innocent, paid $210,000 towards her bail, and a Paris bank had supplied the balance as a loan. In the weeks and months that followed, Marie would drive herself in her small ramshackle car to the cemetery to put flowers on the graves of those she still stood accused of poisoning. While waiting to hear when her new trial would commence, Marie, the woman who admitted that she had little education, began to write her memoirs. The judge had given the 3 experts 3 months to report to him on their findings. The 3 months passed, and then the year ended, and so did the next, and the next, and then in June of 1958, almost 3 years later, the 3 requested permission from the judge to exhume the bodies yet again. More weeks passed, and one of the experts fell ill and passed away, so of course he had to be replaced. Hardly had the new expert come on board when he also fell sick and passed away. Marie was 53 on her first arrest in 1949, and by the age of 62, a new trial was still nowhere in sight. Finally, 3 years later, in November 1961, Marie's 3rd trial had started. For the duration of the trial, she was to be locked up in a prison hospital, since she was 65 years old. Some of the witnesses of the previous trial were no longer alive. Others had moved away. One had even settled in the US. Then there were witnesses who retracted their previous testimonies. One of them was Louise Pinto, Marie's ex-best friend. She now said that Leon had never told her that Marie had put something in his soup. 2 days into the trial, the questioning of the 3 new experts began. One of Marie's advocates stepped up to the blackboard with calculations from their own experts that showed clearly how the calculations of the 3 new experts could be wrong. Marie would claim in her memoirs that she suffered a heart attack in court while an argument was going on, and that her advocates then advised her not to attend each and every court session, but after her doctor had injected her with camphor, that she had felt better. She also felt good when one of the experts from the second trial again gave evidence, and in his testimony described all of the new figures as worthless, and that no conclusion could be drawn from them. An agronomist was called as a witness by the defense. He showed proof that the soil of the cemetery did indeed contain arsenic. Marie's advocates in their final arguments mocked all 3 trials. They said that the first trial of 1952, when the expert was shown to be a confused and incompetent bunch of men, was in fact the real one. They said that the judge in that year found it impossible to convict Marie. And again, in the current trial, there was again nothing, no evidence, no proof of murder to convict her. They asked the jury not to commit the biggest error possible by in fact finding Marie guilty. They told the jury of 9, all of them male, that Marie was an unfortunate innocent who had suffered torture since the year of 1949, and for 12 years after. On the 12th of December, the prosecutor scaled down the state's accusation and asked the jury to find Marie guilty of only 3 murders. Those were of her 2 husbands and her mother. Such a scale down was because, as he said, that he was experiencing doubts on the scientific plane. The jury then went to deliberate. For a conviction, the law required a guilty vote from 7 of the jurors. 3 hours and 25 minutes later, the court was recalled. The jurors had reached a verdict. Back in court, the judge would ask the jurors the same question 11 times. Did Marie deliberately administer a poisonous substance likely to cause a more or less rapid death to victims 1 to 11? To each of the 11's victims' names, the head juror replied firmly, no. Marie was innocent. Marie, who was by then 65, walked unsmilingly from the courthouse into a cold November afternoon and went home to Loudun. On December 22, 1961, in Time magazine's first issue after Marie had walked away from the courthouse, an innocent woman, the magazine ran a story on the case. It headlined its story, Arsenic and No Case, a play on the title of the 1944 movie Arsenic and Old Lace. The movie was based on the 1939 play, which told the story of 2 sweet old ladies who murdered lonely old men. Judging by the headline alone, the magazine reflected the doubt of many that Marie was really innocent. Marie's memoirs was published in Paris the next year in 1962, and it was an instant bestseller. Marie died peacefully in her bed in 1980. She was 84 years old. She donated her body to science. Today, so many years after Marie's death, and more than 70 years after the commencement of the case, France is still divided over whether she was innocent or a most prolific arsenic poisoner. Someone who not only got away with murder, but became wealthy from it. So that is the end of our case for today. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you think that Marie was innocent? Or do you think that she, in fact, got away with murder and got wealthy from it? Please leave your thoughts, your theories, and your opinions in the comment section down below. I always love to read them. If you've gotten this far, I would like to thank you for your support as always. If you've not done so already, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. It's a free way that you can help me out. Until next time, stay safe out there, take care of yourself, and take care of each other. Bye!